Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. Here's what's coming up in this week's show. We're going to take you to meet some members of Venezuela's high society, whose lifestyles would be completely unimaginable for so many of their compatriots. And it might be one of the most dangerous countries on earth to be a reporter, but that's not stopping investigative journalists in Mexico from doing their job and winning awards along the way. Plus, marking 100 years since the birth of Eva Perón, we find out more about how the life of this 20th century icon is being celebrated in Argentina. We begin in Venezuela, a country in the grip of the worst economic and political crisis in its history, where hyperinflation and power blackouts are making daily life even more unbearable for a population already suffering from chronic food shortages. But despite the country's descent into chaos, some younger sections of Venezuelan society are still managing to live life to the full, and at the same time, they're doing their bit to help out. France 24's Andrew Hillier explains.
It could be London, Paris or New York. But this party is being held in Caracas. For a young generation with money to spend, most rich Venezuelans have already fled abroad. But these 30-somethings refuse to abandon their country.
If we leave, who will fight to get our country back on its feet again?
A stylist is hosting tonight's party. In a country where the average wage for a government worker is only $6 a month, her $45 T-shirts are an unimaginable luxury for most people.
Aren't you ashamed of such flamboyance in the midst of a crisis?
No, on the contrary. We mustn't all plunge into sadness. Otherwise, we'll never pull through.
Those lucky enough to come from Venezuela's upper class live and work here in eastern Caracas. There are no slums here, only a business district. And there are bodegons everywhere, shops full of imported goods impossible to find elsewhere. To buy luxury goods like these, only dollars will do. Victor is part of Venezuela's high society. He supports the opposition to Nicolas Maduro's regime and hopes for a better future for his country. As a luxury property dealer, he's been hard hit by the economic crisis.
Lots of businessmen who earned $30,000 per month only earn about $1,000 now. The revenues are in free fall. Yet we're in a country rich with petrol, and the business potential should be huge.
Most Venezuelans spend on average 4 hours every day standing in line just to feed themselves. Basic ingredients like flour and sugar are nowhere to be found. Moved by the sight of so much poverty, Victor decided to set up a charity to bring food to the slums of Caracas. Several of his friends, from the upper class like him, are also helping out. Twice a week, they deliver 200 dinners to children and old people, many of whom suffer from malnutrition.
I'm here helping to make arepas. It feels good to help.
The volunteers have no trouble threading their way through the city's poorest and most dangerous neighborhood. Before the crisis, these youths would never have ventured here. But now they're welcomed. For these children, it's their only full meal of the day. It's also an opportunity to spend time with grown-ups. The meal is filmed from every angle. And the charity's members, lawyers, television hosts, comedians are all social media savvy.
We put these clips on social media. That helps us collect donations. People see how their money is used. That's brought the charity to life in 2 months.
State aid is virtually non-existent. But in Venezuela, solidarity is sacred, and initiatives like Victor's are spreading to stem the humanitarian emergency.
Now, Mexico is considered to be one of the most dangerous countries on earth to be a journalist. Then of all the 180 nations in Reporters Without Borders annual ranking, it comes fairly close to the bottom in 144th position. Well, even the recent World Press Freedom Day was marred by the death of a reporter in the south of the country. But on that same day, a team of 7 journalists was presented with a prize for their investigative work. France 24's Catherine Bennett takes a closer look at their reporting.
It's a horrifying scene. These families are digging through the earth in an attempt to find the remains of their loved ones who have been murdered and buried in mass graves. These crimes are committed by drug cartels and organ traffickers, often with the help of corrupt police officers. A group of 7 American and Mexican journalists have decided to map the sites of these graves.
It's important because over the years we've been able to see how the war on drugs has had the effect of increasing this kind of violence. In 2006 there were 2 graves. That shot up to 100 the year after, and now there are more than 250 graves discovered each year.
The investigation began a year and a half ago, and already 2,000 hidden graves have been mapped on their website. This year they were awarded the Breach Valdez Journalism Prize, which honours journalists who risk their lives to cover human rights abuses in the country.
What we do is a sort of truth commission in real time, while we wait for justice to be done. We write articles about it every day.
Mexico is one of the most dangerous countries in the world, with a murder rate that's increasing year on year. According to Reporters Without Borders, the country is as risky for journalists as Afghanistan, Syria or Yemen. In 2018, 10 Mexican journalists were assassinated. This year, 4 have already been killed. The most recent was the radio reporter Telésforo Santiago Enriquez, who was murdered on his way to work. He was known for his reporting on corruption and had received threats while on air. He was murdered on World Press Freedom Day.
Now, US employers just seem to keep on adding new jobs, and economists say the outlook for the months ahead remains robust. Well, here is a number for you to remember. 3.6%. That is the current level of unemployment in the world's #1 economy, and it's the lowest level in half a century. We're going to take you now to one corner of Indiana, where demand for workers seems to far outweigh supply.
Now hiring signs have been plastered throughout the city. Elkhart County in Indiana is known as the RV capital of the world, as 80% of global RV production is based throughout the region. It's now experiencing the lowest unemployment rate in the last 20 years, to the point where factories are struggling to find enough workers.
And at any given time, we have anywhere from 75 to 100 positions available.
This RV constructor is one of many which has seen its production skyrocket along with the growing U.S. economy.
It's grown fast and it's continued to grow. And now what we're finding is it's not only the growth, but we're finding that we're in a small Midwestern community here. And so we just don't have as many people who are familiar with the industry in the area to fill all the jobs we have.
Companies that supply RV manufacturers are faced with the same problem. Here, 200 workers are assembling car windows, and there are still 60 more jobs to fill.
There are 4 people in this cell that would be able to work if we had them employed. The shortage of people does limit the amount of windows that we can produce.
Workers already work 10 hours a day and often overtime. The RV sector is the most well-paid, so other jobs now appear less attractive. The food service industry is the most hard hit in terms of employee shortage. So in this restaurant, the owner is now hiring high school students, paying them $17 an hour.
The 20, 21, 22-year-olds, they're not there anymore. So we have to go back a little bit to a younger generation.
The city is even going out of its way to recruit the right people. It needs waitresses, accountants, clerks, and computer scientists. This bus full of students fresh out of college has arrived. All are here because the city has invited them to attend this job fair.
A lot of firms are really almost desperate even, going around to every college they can, trying to talk to as many college grads as they can.
During this 2-day job fair, these college graduates will be offered about 20 different jobs in all sectors of the economy.
Now, it was exactly 100 years ago, in May of 1919, that Eva Perón was born in a simple house in the town of Los Toldos, which is about 300 kilometers away from the Argentine capital. Well, she went on to become one of the most famous women in modern history, adored by many as a champion of the poor, even celebrated as the heroine in the musical Evita. Well, she died in 1952 at the age of just 33. Well, let's take a look now at what's been done to mark the centenary of her birth.
An unusual group gathered in the streets of Buenos Aires on the 7th of May. 100 women dressed as Eva Perón, the legendary former First Lady of Argentina. They marched through the capital to celebrate the 100th anniversary of her birth. Best known as Evita, Perón has become a feminist symbol because of her fight for women's suffrage.
She was an illegitimate child and an actress, which at the time was essentially considered being a prostitute, someone from a poor background. She turned all that into a badge of honor, a part of her identity. Her greatest lesson was that no one had to be a prisoner of their own destiny.
The crowd reached the country's health ministry, where in 1951 almost 2 million people gathered to call on Eva Perón to run for the vice presidency. 9 days later, ill with cancer and under intense pressure by the military, Perón was forced to withdraw from the race. People all over Argentina paid tribute, particularly in her hometown, Los Toldos.
The greatness of Evita is her heart. The rights she obtained for women, the rights she obtained for citizens, for children, for work and inclusion. That is Eva Perón. Eva Perón is the people.
Perón died at the age of 33 from cervical cancer. The woman given the title Spiritual Leader of the Nation has also become a symbol for the campaign to legalize abortion in the country.
And finally, it's an invitation-only A-list celebrity event, which is held for the benefit of the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. But this year's edition of the Met Gala was even more dazzling than usual, as the guests took the theme, which was camp, to its outer extremes. Well, needless to say, the carpet wasn't red, it was bright pink. And everywhere you looked, there was gold lames, sequins, ostrich feathers, neon, and flowing gowns. Well, we leave you with those pictures. Thanks for watching. Stay with us here on France 24.
Business news is not about numbers, nor percentages and statistics. Business news is about people and how we live our lives. People and Profit goes beyond numbers to analyze how the global flow of money and profits shape our world. Intelligent and accessible, the show cuts across business, economics and politics.
People and Profit on France 24 and France24.com.
France 24, a different point of view.